now, we give you pagan news. With Krys Copeland, Don Lewis, Lone Wolf and Mary Hawk. News headlines for the pagan community and to the world. I give you pagan news.
And hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis, and this is Pagan News, the new news program with a focus on the pagan audience. With me is Krys Copeland, our European correspondent, and this program is a collaboration between Corellian TV, Divination TV, Witchcraft TV, and Pagan TV. And our four anchors are myself, Krys, Harold Lone Wolf Carter, and Mary Hawk. Mary is unable to join us today, but we are going to be starting with her pre-recorded segment. And what's going to happen is that each of the four of us will be bringing a story to the program, and we will be presenting those to you, and we hope that you will enjoy them. And let us begin now with Mary's segment, and we shall return.
Hello, everyone. I am Reverend Mary Hawk, and for my section of the report, first of all, I want to talk to you about what's going on in my home state of Tennessee. Once more, the Tennessee General Assembly is trying to make the Bible the state book. This measure has been proposed for the third time by Representative Jerry Sexton, Republican representative from Bean Station. He first proposed this in 2016. It was vetoed by Governor Bill Haslam, who argued that this measure trivialized the Bible. Representative Sexton proposed it again in 2020 when the measure did not make it out of committee. Now in 2024, it has passed both the State House and the State Senate. It is heading to Governor Bill Lee's desk for signature. At this time, Governor Lee has not signaled his intentions. But this time the bill is a little different. It's designating the Aitken's Bible, a particular version of the Bible, as one of a slate of 10 books to be all considered official state books of Tennessee. The Aitken's Bible is the first Bible to be published in the United States. It was published in Philadelphia in 1782 by Roger Aitken. This was during the Revolutionary War, when Bibles could no longer be imported from Great Britain. So this is significant to United States history and to the history of the state of Pennsylvania, but it's not relevant to Tennessee history. We did not even become a state until 1796. Now, I'm a native Tennessean. I have lived all but 3 years of my life here, and I love my state. I just wish the General Assembly would spend more time addressing the many issues facing our state and less time trying to establish the dominance of Christianity over all other religions. And now, on a happier note, As everyone who has not been fasting from all forms of media knows, tomorrow we are having a solar eclipse that will be seen over a good deal of the United States, whether you have totality or just some darkness. And there has been a lot of concern over what this means. So I wanted to show you the numerology of the date 4/8/2024. So the numerology of 4/8/2024. And I'm going to explain how I come to my conclusions. So in numerology, we find the numerology of dates by adding across. So we're looking at 4 plus 8 plus 20, 24, or 4 plus 8 plus 2 plus 2 plus 4, which gives us 4 plus 8 plus 8, which is 12 plus 8. But we break down double numbers into single numbers by adding them together. So we're going to break down that 12 into 1 plus 2, and that gives us 3 plus 8, which adds up to the master number 11. And I know I just said we break down double numbers by adding them together. But there's an exception to every rule. When we get a double number like 11 or 22, 33, we consider these master numbers and we don't break them down. So what does the master number 11 mean? This number is very intuitive, very spiritual, and very psychic. So there you go, folks. This is what numerology is telling us about tomorrow's date. If you are looking for a time to begin psychic or spiritual work, tomorrow is the day to do it and take the spiritual energy of the eclipse and use that to your advantage.
So thank you, Mary. That was Mary's report for this month, dealing with the Aiken's Bible in Tennessee and the numerology of the upcoming eclipse. And normally we would have a little question and answer period here, but Mary is unable to join us today. So her report will stand on its own. But next up is Krys. And we have Krys's report ready to go in just a moment. I should probably point out that we do not have our normal engineer with us today, which is having a little bit of an effect, which is kind of obvious, but everything is well.
Welcome to Pagan News. I'm Krys Copeland, your European news correspondent. Today we bring to light an eco-activism movement that's redefining urban landscapes of the Netherlands and beyond: guerrilla gardening. Born from the seed sown by Liz Christie and her green guerrillas from 1970s New York, guerrilla gardening has since taken root globally. Liz's weapon of choice in the battle for regreening Gaia? The seed bomb, first used by Japanese farmer and philosopher Masanobu Fukuoka. Fukuoka, who was an advocate of natural farming methods, developed seed bombs in the mid-20th century as a way to easily reintroduce vegetation to degraded landscapes without the need for tilling, weeding, or the application of any chemicals. His philosophy of do-nothing farming emphasized working with nature rather than against it, and seed bombs were a perfect embodiment of this principle. This movement, at its heart, is an act of reclaiming land for public good, transforming neglected spaces into verdant green patches that enrich biodiversity, foster community, and combat urban heat islands. Later adopted by Liz Christie in the 1970s, seed bombs are created by encasing seeds in a mixture of clay, compost, and sometimes other organic materials to form small balls. These balls can then be thrown or dropped into areas that need greening, such as vacant lots, roadside verges, or mountainous areas. The protective coating keeps the seeds moist and safe from birds or insects until conditions are right for them to sprout. In the Netherlands, this grassroots activism flourishes through collaboration with local authorities, turning unauthorized greening into endorsed urban oases. These guerrilla gardens stand as testaments to the power of community and a shared commitment to environmental stewardship. However, the path of the guerrilla gardener is not without its thorns. Legal challenges loom large when the land cultivated is not one's own. Trespassing, a central element of guerrilla gardening, has led to confrontation, as seen in the case of urban farmer Novella Carpenter in Oakland, California, whose efforts, though beneficial, were technically against the law. Her crime? Planting a community vegetable garden in an abandoned parking lot close to her home. Her punishment? The forced shutdown of her urban farming project, or a $5,000 fine. Her choice. In embracing the spirit of guerrilla gardening, we're reminded of the importance of navigating these challenges with awareness and care. This movement is not just about the physical transformation of spaces, but also about sowing the seeds of change in how we view our relationship with the environment. It's a call to action for communities to engage with their surroundings creatively and conscientiously, pushing the boundaries of traditional activism in the pursuit of a greener, more connected world. Moving on to our second European story this evening, we delve into a landmark development within the European Union, a draft regulation that heralds a new era of corporate accountability for human rights and environmental impacts. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, this ambitious proposal requires large EU companies, as well as some non-European entities engaged significantly within Europe, to rigorously assess and rectify their human rights and environmental impacts across their operations and supply chains. A failure to comply could lead to both administrative penalties and civil liability for the companies involved. The essence of this directive, as noted by Mayer Brown, an international law firm representing many of the world's corporations, funds, and financial institutions, is deeply rooted in internationally recognized frameworks such as the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights and the OECD Guidelines for Multinational Enterprises. These frameworks underscore the corporate responsibility to respect human rights, compelling companies to undertake due diligence to identify, prevent, mitigate, and account for any human rights harms they may cause or contribute to. This shift from voluntary initiatives to mandatory compliance highlights a significant change in the approach by the EU, aiming to bring about a widespread improvement in corporate practices regarding human rights and environmental preservation. Further elaborating on the specifics, Mayor Brown reports that the proposed directive encompasses robust measures including stakeholder engagement, adoption of climate transition plans aligning with the Paris Agreement, and a dual enforcement mechanism to ensure compliance. The directive aims to offer legal clarity and a level playing field regarding corporate supply chain obligations, setting a precedent for sustainable corporate behavior on a global scale. However, the journey to this directive has not been without its challenges and controversies. Intense negotiations highlighted divergent views, especially concerning the financial sector and the extent of due diligence requirements. Ultimately, a political compromise was reached, marking a significant step forward in corporate sustainability efforts within the EU. Civil society has lauded this agreement as a critical advancement for human rights and environmental protections in the business world, albeit with concerns over certain exemptions, such as those related to financial activities. As the directive moves forward towards endorsement, it represents not only a regulatory shift, but also a call to action for companies to realign their operations with ethics and environmental standards. The implementation of this directive will necessitate a comprehensive overhaul of corporate policies and practices, urging companies to embark on a journey of transformation towards greater sustainability and responsibility. Stay tuned as we continue to monitor this pivotal development and its implications for Gaia, pagan activists, and corporate conduct and accountability on the global stage. Our final story tonight circles back to the theme of eco-activism within urban landscapes, bringing us to Brussels, Belgium, where a project named The Reef is laying the groundwork for a future where communal living and environmental sustainability intersect. Just as guerrilla gardening seeks to transform neglected spaces, The Reef is reimagining how we can live and work together in harmony with our surroundings. In the spirit of innovation and community, The Reef is not just about creating a space, fostering a living environment where sustainability is not an afterthought, but a foundational principle. Through strategies like waste reduction, energy efficiency, and building with sustainable materials, The Reef is actively contributing to a greener future. It's a testament to what can be achieved when communities come together to challenge conventional living spaces and embrace new models of cohabitation. But The Reef also reminds us that living sustainably is as much about the social fabric we weave as it is about the physical infrastructure we build. It champions the idea that green living and communal spaces can coexist, providing a blueprint for others to follow. As we've seen with guerrilla gardening, small actions and community spirit can lead to impactful changes. And The Reef is another branch of this growing movement towards more sustainable urban ecosystems. As we close tonight's European segment on Pagan News, we're reminded of the power and potential of community-driven efforts to reshape our urban landscapes into greener, more inclusive spaces. From guerrilla gardening in the Netherlands to the landmark EU environmental and human rights law, and all the way to The Reef in Brussels, it is evident that the seeds of change are being sown across Europe. These initiatives, each in their own way, are forging paths towards a future where sustainability, justice, and community are intertwined, promising a more sustainable and connected future for us all. I'm Krys Copeland, your European news correspondent. Now back to our live programming.
So, thank you, Krys. And if you're watching this on any platform, I believe pretty much any platform, if you'd like to have any questions at this time for Krys about her story, you can type them on that platform. They should show up here in our chat room. And I have a question for you, Krys, about how people can practice guerrilla gardening safely.
Yeah, that's a really important issue. I think we have it fixed now. Here we go.
So.
That's okay. We've got it fixed now. Yeah, that's actually a really important issue because, as I said in the programming in the segment, there have been people that have faced both civil and criminal charges for this situation. Criminal trespass is a large one that people face. So the easiest way to deal with this is through the same method that the Netherlands guerrilla gardeners use, Youth, which is actually working with the local authorities, working with the owners of the property, if possible. And now, of course, this isn't always the case. Sometimes local authorities are not interested in regreening the area, or they don't want the legal hassle of maybe contacting the owner of the place to get that in writing. But so if you are going to practice civil disobedience and continue to seed bomb or continue to guerrilla garden, then my best advice is, if you do face any kind of legal consequences for that, don't talk to the police. Just whatever you do, don't talk to the police. Instead, talk to a lawyer. So that you will have some protection if you are ever taken in for questioning for any actions related to civil disobedience. This is the same advice I would give anyone regarding any form of civil disobedience that you practice. Just there's a great show about it. I won't say the full phrasing of it, but the best phrase to use when talking about legal aspects with this and police officers is just shut up.
Yes.
If you're ever confronted with them.
So as you can tell, things are happening in our studio in kind of random ways today, which I don't quite understand, but that's part of the thrill of live broadcasting. So thank you, Krys, for that fascinating report. We don't have anyone commenting in the chat room.
So we can go ahead and continue with our next story then.
Yes.
Now we turn to Harold Carter's enlightening series on incarcerated pagans. In this compelling exploration, Harold uncovers the unique ways pagans navigate their spirituality within the confines of the prison system, and he sheds light on their struggles, triumphs, and the sense of community that they forge against all odds.
The first person to be tried, convicted, and executed for witchcraft in America's 13 colonies was Alice Young. She was from Windsor, Connecticut, and her execution took place in 1647, which was 45 years before the Salem witch trials.
Miss Young, may your spirit rest in homage to your story. But a lot has changed here in the continental United States for people who go to jail. You don't go to jail for witchcraft anymore. We have a bit more equality even with the 200-300 years. Not saying that we don't have lots of growth and learning curves along the way. The continental United States has come a long way with witchcraft being illegal and punishable by death, and now we have incarcerated pagans all around the country. And in this series, we're going to talk about them and who's available out there in the pagan community offering their hand.
Harold Carter from Pagan News brings you the Incarcerated Pagan series.
I myself have done time in America's prison system. But let's be clear, the United States locks up more of its citizens than any other country in the world. And it wasn't always that case either. When we had the drug epidemics in the 90s and 2000s, it started mass incarceration. So with this incarceration, you have lots of people incarcerated who have done things that want to change their lives. And let's face it, statistics show that drug and alcohol is one of the main factors with recidivism, with people going in and out of the prison systems of America. So I too, going through the prison systems, looking for a better way, embrace the spirituality of Wicca, and hence I have my own success stories, but it's not about me, it's about what's going on in the organizations, people, families that are there to support our incarcerated population of pagans. In 2000, I was convicted of carjacking in the state of Florida, and I did some time in jail there, prison, Appalachia Correctional, Dade CI, Lake Butler, the whole works. And while I was there, I was trying to find out, what I was doing. And I knew that I had alcohol problems, but I was too young to figure it out. But it was with earth-based spirituality and learning from some of the other inmates that passed me different magazines and stuff and periodicals of the time. And some of those people that were reaching out to prisoners was a group of people from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, and they had a organization called the Millennial Kingdom, and they had a periodical called the Rays of Light. And that was some of the first exposure where these priestesses and priest reached out to pagan prisoners. And it was a life-turning, experience. Shortly after, I went to Salem, searching for that spiritual hunger. And I did have counsel from the Millennial Kingdom from Pottsville when I had gotten out, but still unwilling to change. And I know that the Millennial Kingdom worked with prisoners, and it worked. It came out not as good. It came out baneful. It came out bad. And that's the thing. There's a certain amount of risk involved with working with people that have been to prison and saying that they're coming home and they're embracing earth-based spirituality in a form of paganism. There's a lot of dangers that can be, brought to the surface, especially with our leaders and clergy. Another organization that were very giving towards the incarcerated pagan population, believe it or not, and I know this is going to create a controversial wave for our platform, but let history, be written, as it should. Yvonne and Gavin Frost from the Church's School of Wicca had outreach. Keep in mind that pagan prisoners in those days, when they were a full, thriving, functional Wiccan church, they charged for their services. So we have that. Church and School of Wicca. You have the Millennial Kingdom. And this is just on my own trajectory, but this is definitely news. For someone that has been raised by penal institutions in and out with recidivism, and was able to find the excellent roadmap to change the trajectory of his life. These are the things, these are the teachers, these are the people that were kind to me as a prisoner in America. So after Church and School of Wicca, we have the Main State Prison. I went to the Main State, and that's a whole different story there, where there's an actual living coven in the Main State Prison, and they've been there for 20 years. The Coven of the Sacred Tree, they're called. So there's all kinds of experiences with that. What it's like to be pagan in jail, in prison. What are they thinking about? A lot of people incarcerated give you the song and the dance. When I get out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to change, I'm going to do something different. Lo and behold, when that loved ones or a person that we all know comes out of jail, they're back to the same old thing. And as witches or people in our pagan community, we understand cycles, and breaking those cycles can be done with the force of what I like to just call good old American witchcraft. But it is possible. Notably, in pagan news, in more recent acts, one of the elders in our community, and he just passed to the Summerland, Reverend Paul Barrow, worked exclusively with incarcerated pagans with his POP program, Prison Outreach Program, where it had a correspondence course, where it had valuable feedback, where it had notes and different functions where those particular notes from that course did help change the trajectory of my life forever. Did expose the writings of Doreen Valiente's Charge of the Goddess, which talks about the highest ideals axiom, which I focused on and tapped into that current of magic, and I'm no longer suffering in recidivism. So that's what we have. And we have a lot as we heard in the beginning of the segment, the amount of people incarcerated in the country are phenomenal. So we have paganism, which is booming in the country, which is booming in the worldwide scale. You know, it's on the influx, you know. So who are these prisoners reaching out to? What organizations, what elders? And that's what I want to talk about right here on the series. Paul Barrow is no longer with us in the Summerland. His lineage has been overwhelmed with things, so that particular outreach program for prisoners is not as strong. These programs come and go. Sometimes they have correspondence courses where they have, but there's always motive. There's always motive, and it's also a rarity for a person to get out of incarceration and completely, erase all of the bad negative attributes that they had them suffering in that recidivism to begin with. So it's a serious endeavor for anybody in clergy to be working with pagans that are incarcerated. For most, the motives of the people incarcerated vary from person to person. So who helps the pagan prisoners these days? Who does? There was a lot of work in the early days. When I say early days, I see within the span of my own lifetime. Because we mentioned Miss Young, who was the first witch in the country, executed, in jail. We're no longer, killed in jail, but the services rendered for people in jail are minuscule. It's only 300 years ago that they were doing that. But yeah, the first witch locked up in the country, Miss Young, and we pay her homage. We pay her homage. So yes, what's going on with the incarcerated pagan population? We have chaplains that are Judaic, giving them their information. They have their own motives. I mean, the motives are in the disciplines of their religion. And I think this is the major discrepancy within religions, is one claiming to be the only way. And that's where the line is drawn.
In a recent interview, pagan inmate advocate Lady Crowmoon released the following statement.
Selena Fox has a group that they do work with pagan inmates. Maca Nightmare, also in California.
Right. Is Selena's outreach specifically for Wisconsin, or do you know?
No, they're actually, I think the group is that is doing it, I think is in like the New York area.
Harold Carter, while inside the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, interviewed a pagan man, and he had this to say.
I mean, just keep promoting it, keep putting it out there. I love you, we need you.
Incarcerated pagans face unique challenges. Providing support, they can make a significant difference in their lives. Here's some ways that you help them. Writing ministry for prisoners. The Pagan Federation Prison Ministry, PFPM, offers a writing ministry for incarcerated pagans. Writing ministers correspond with prisoners, providing spiritual or pagan care. They discuss matters of religion and spirituality, offering a lifeline to those seeking connection with the outside world. These letters are vetted by the prison staff to ensure security and confidentiality. If you work with the Pagan Federation Prison Ministry, which is very easy to Google, always use a fake name and, Pagan Federation postal address. Be cautious about sharing your personal information. Respond only, spiritual matters within the confines of earth-based spirituality. And report any of those concerns about self-harm, suicide or, security stuff or bad things, to the proper officials. Be a pen pal to pagan prisoners. That's the greatest thing in the world, is communication. I can remember a very happy day when I would get mail from a pagan priest or priestess. Consider being a pagan pen pal, for incarcerated pagans, if not one or two, or maybe one. If it calls to you, if the Spirit calls you to that direction. Remember that the letters are a link to the outside world for these prisoners. And some of the prisoners have been there for many, many years. Some found pagan spirituality in jail, and some have pagan spiritual connections on the outside world. Most of all, just use discernment. You can donate to organizations that specifically assist incarcerated individuals, but please use your due research, as many people prey upon the emotions of the masses. But of course, you know, pagans, witches, we have the utmost discernment. Organizations like the Prison Fellowship, they offer opportunities to volunteer in prisons. But above all, remember that even small acts of this kindness have a profound impact in the lives of incarcerated people. Whether through writing or volunteering or supporting organizations, your efforts do contribute to their well-being and spiritual growth, which help us all build a better foundation, a more solid footprint in what it is of the righteousness of earth-based pagan spirituality.
And thank you, Harold. That was, I think, a very impressive story and the beginning of what will be a very impressive series.
Yes, I'm very curious to continue watching this particular series, just because I see such a difference between the way the American prison system is compared to most of Europe, but particularly here in the Netherlands where I am. Most of our prisons are actually empty. We're using them to house refugees right now, which of course is also, you know, has its own issues regarding putting people in a place that's designed to be a punishment when they're running from war, from political disasters. But it's very different here in the Netherlands. There's much better health care given to the inmates. There's no overcrowding. And everyone basically has their own kind of, it's almost like a mini hotel room. It's not, you get way more privacy than you do in the American prison system. And in addition, they don't have work crews that are basically forced slave labor here in the Netherlands from prisoners. And that's something I find so shocking, that we still have an active slave system in America through our prison systems.
Yes, indeed. We do have a few comments in the chat room. From Kat, we have, "I am so proud of you, Harold." Yes, indeed. And we have a hello from Nikki Kirby, and from Celeste, "Hello, brother." So lots of regard for Harold. Do we have any questions in the chat room?
Yeah, we would love to hear from everyone. And I think that number is so shocking that he talked about the amount of people that are in the prison system in America. I believe it's 1/3 of the population has served time in jail or in prison, and 2/3 of the American population has had some kind of negative or traumatic event with a police officer.
Yeah, it's quite shocking when you think about it, especially if you're of a certain age and you predate that era. To see how things have changed is it's not good. No. And this is something that we'll be talking about along with many different subjects as this series goes forward.
And I love that Harold gave several ways to help out our pagan siblings that are behind bars right now. Oftentimes through circumstances that they didn't create for themselves, but they just ended up dealing with for themselves. I see Jeanette in the chat as well. She says hello and good afternoon.
Hello, Jeanette. And normally we would have Harold here with us to answer questions, but technology has not been our friend today. And I believe that he has answered some posts in the chat room because he is here, but we've had trouble getting him on. So we're going to go on to our next story, which is from me. And
I'm very excited for this one.
Thank you. This is an interview with Sarah Hartsong from Tola's Sanctuary. And let us pull that up. and we will hear that interview. Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis, and my guest today is professional high priestess Sarah Hartsong. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Don.
How are you today?
It's a fabulous day here in the Pacific Northwest. We actually have some sun shining, and that's not always the case. It's
That's
really
wonderful.
nice to see everything popping up in the springtime.
So I wanted to talk to you. I want to talk to you a little bit about your career and also about your newest book. And could we talk first just a few minutes about your career?
Absolutely, love to.
And you were telling me about your adventures in the 90s. I don't know
Yes.
if you would like to.
Sure. I will just tell a little story here. So in the 90s, I had my little epiphany and the come to the goddess moment in 1992. And I realized I'm a witch. And oh my gosh, now I'm a part of an oppressed part of our culture. And now I get to come out and it's scary to tell people this identity and deal with all of that stuff that comes too. And in 94, I went to Pacific Lutheran University for the last 2 years of my bachelor's degree. And I did not want to take religion. I did not want to take religion, but it was required to take 2 religion classes. And no, at a Christian institution cannot do this. Yet my advisor, who happened to be the dean of the religion department, said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll love it. It's fine. It's not what you think it is." And she was absolutely right. And I ended up majoring in religion with a complementary major of global studies and a minor in anthropology. And the thesis I wrote for that degree was patchwork quilt theology, and it was about Wicca, and talked about that open and out as a witch, first witch to ever be open and out, graduating from Pacific Lutheran University. and but I loved it, and I loved the feminist theology, liberation theology, all of those things. Totally got enmeshed in it. So going to events and such. So that's my undergrad was that. My graduate degree is from New Mexico State University, and it is in communication studies. And that degree, I have my thesis was on coming out of the broom closet, the communicative act of self-disclosure as a witch. And I interviewed some witches about their experience with coming out and put it together in a thesis. It was qualitative research, and it was wonderful. And I attended an event up here for many years, and used that as a jumping off point for that thesis, which is now housed in the NMSU, New Mexico State University's main library. Under all of their theses, there's one on coming out of the broom closet.
Very good.
So I've been around since then, and my path has always been solitary. I would say I'm a solitaire high priestess in community. So I never joined a particular coven or group or anything like that. All my guides would let me join is like associations. So like the Unitarian Universalist Church, I could join because it's like an association of bunch of different people with beliefs, different beliefs, and they come together. And I got some amazing training through them. For about 10 years, I was in leadership at a UU church, and then was guided by Spirit kicking my butt. Can't continue, got to shift and pivot and move along. So I did. And now I'm full-time up here at the Pacific Northwest, and I have a land sanctuary, which is 13 acres of land that we are developing to be a place where people who are nature-centered in their spiritual beliefs can come and be safe in their worship, outside, be naked in their rights if they want, and have a place that they know is for this. And so I started a Beltane, which is hived off of the Beltane in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is a Beltane festival that has been happening for over 40 years now. And I went to, I attended over the course of about 15 years, I believe it was. In and out. Sometimes I was there, sometimes I wasn't, but more than likely I was there. And so watch this event evolve. And the other bit is that here in the Pacific Northwest, I keep coming up here and I get trainings both places on sexuality and consent and how important that is. And I've watched this happen through our communities in different places. Since I've been one that walks in and out of communities, I have been watching, I've been listening, I've been learning, I've been growing through this process. And I've always been there talking to the leaders about what's going on. Can I help? And so it's been more focused on supporting our leaders has been a big deal of my path. And so now I do that in multiple ways, one with the land sanctuary, but also the development of an association, which we call the TOLUS, which stands for the Tree of Life Interfaith Sanctuary, which is a place that is a virtual place that anyone who is nature centered in their spiritual focus and agree with our ethical statement on how we will behave with one another and the way we view the world is in that statement. And if you agree with that, join the TOLUS. It doesn't matter what tradition you come from. We center around that, how we're going to behave together and where our beliefs center ultimately is in nature and supporting each other through that. So coming up this Saturday is a leaders summit, which is one day this year, and it's an all-day event. So here in the Pacific Northwest, it starts at 8 a.m. and will end at 8 p.m. And it's a compilation of workshops throughout the day that are 2 to 3 hours long. There's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. The first one, Krys Copeland is going to be coming to share about publishing one's wisdom and preserving our elders' wisdom through the Corellian publications of publishing. And then we're going to have Dr. Logan Sparks come and share on constellations therapy, which is an amazing systemic process of being able to clear past things so that we can get to a new future. So he even does land clearings with this process, but we're talking generational healing. It's an amazingly magical process that is also super supported around the whole globe by our native communities. So he's going to come and present his work, and then we're going to actually do some constellations so people can experience it. Then in the afternoon, a wisdom circle that I'll be leading, which is 4 rounds, like we normally have every quarter, a wisdom circle where people can come together and share, learn different things. There's a little training embedded in it. It's really good. So I invite everyone to join us in our association. The more we can support each other, the better, because I have watched our communities break each other down more often than I can tell you that they supported each other and lifted each other up. And this is a place we can work better. And we
That's
can work
wonderful.
better together. But you
Now,
have to
if
join.
people
You have
want
to
to
actually
join,
do it. What was the
if
question?
people want to join, where would you send them?
Yes, to our website. It's tolussanctuary.org. So TOLIS, and then that S becomes sanctuary because that's what it's standing for. So tolussanctuary.org.
Wonderful. Now, you've just brought out a new book dealing with Beltane. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I definitely would like to talk about that because remember that Beltane that I told you that I attended for all those years?
I
And I
do.
watched that community grow and shift and change and add consent policies and sacred safe space policies and watched this all develop so beautifully. And they supported me in hiving off of them. And in this process now, for years and years, I've been working on this Wheel of the Year books series. And so my own version, because I've also raised a daughter who's now 25 within the faith and
Mhm.
open to her exploring and becoming her own person around her faith. Those are the two things that are super important to me. So I want to encourage and support other parents who are doing that. Now, parents are leaders. They're leading their children. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to create a tool for the children and the parents. And that's what has happened, is that my Wheel of the Year book, I wasn't exactly sure what was going to change it, like from all of the other, what was going to distinguish it between the other books that are out there. And when it all of a sudden came into focus that my audience is preteens, all of a sudden the book just came out of me. It happened, and it happened so quickly. I know Spirit is pushing it, and it's
Yeah.
coming, because this is a little tool that will help the children to integrate in our community that is very different than the wider community social standards, and also for the parents to help support their children in one being comfortable at an event and being empowered to be themselves at that event,
That's wonderful.
as
Yeah, I think,
well as
yeah,
that difficult topic of sexual education, because
yeah,
Beltane is a time of sexiness. And how do you talk to children about that? That's tricky. How do you
yeah,
create an event where children can be there when people are being sexy and then be safe?
yes.
And I have an example of the safe space policy for the Beltane that we've created here at Erosia, which is the second year that we're doing it, is this year. I also want to promote that event because it's an amazing little event that we've got a second year of. We're trying to grow, trying to help support our sanctuary too in this growth by creating these events through. And again, we're just getting started, so it's a work in process. Yeah. So this book is one of those things that just feels like it's the right time.
Yes, indeed. And I think this is so important to have more resources for pagan families and pagan parents.
In addition, in that book, I was just remembering, I was going to mention, there's a safe space policy that Beltane Southwest started, they developed, and then since I've hived off of them, I get access to their communities work, which is developed over years. Is beautiful policy. We translated just tiny changes to go into the book, and it's there. So there's another opportunity for people to develop a similar type of thing.
Wonderful. And if you're interested in getting that book, you can get it from CorellianPublishing.com, or I believe you can get it directly from Amazon as well.
Absolutely. And I've got it actually published in 3 different versions. Now, remember, the number 3 is an important number for us, and I just love this, that we were able to do this little bit of my vision, which is to have a spiral bound version.
Hmm.
So we have a spiral bound version, we have a paperback version, and we have the electronic downloadable version. And why I like the little spiral bound is because you can take this book apart if you
Hmm.
want. And you can give the kid the glossary and the little story and just give them that if you want. Or you can give them the whole thing, or you can take it apart later after I've got all the year books come out of me, um, and compile those sections together at a later time. So there's a more flexibility there. And hey, remember what I said about glossary? This is also a reader's version. So we have words bolded that have the definition in a glossary, so they can look it up if they don't know. And there's also an ability to create a statement of identity in the center of this book, which will help them to understand the different kinds of identities that are out there. What is non-binary, for instance? What does that mean? What does it mean when somebody says they're polyamorous? What does that mean? How does that get enacted? So I have a little story that is a little non-binary. That's the younger people's little story about the Pastafarian kids. And then a traditional story that is retold, very true to the story though, with a little tiny bit of an insert of a new thought I had gleaned from a midwifery um, website that truly speaks to the wisdom of Rhiannon, and she, in my head, is all about it, which is the very beginning of that story when she is just doing her own rite of passage from being a child to an adult. And that's not in the Mabinogi.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
And
for having me.
it's been a great pleasure.
Also, thank you for joining the Tollis. We
Oh,
love having you as a part of our association.
thank you. And thank you, everyone. And we will talk to you soon. And I want to thank Sarah for that lovely interview. And we do have a couple of comments in the chat room, not particularly about that, but one person says, "What a great network of pagan media." Thank you. We greatly appreciate that.
And it's been a blast to work through this and connect with everybody. And there's so much talent that's coming in with the Pagan Media Network that we're creating. It's lovely to see.
Yes, indeed. And we have a hello from Colin Price, a Gardnerian high priest, joining us from Tenerife.
Hello, Colin. Good to see you.
Yes, indeed. That's wonderful. So we're coming up on the end of our hour. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Krys, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Reverend Mary for her story. I want to thank Harold for his story. I want to thank everyone who's been watching. We will be back in 1 month with more stories for you and with our full contingent of reporters present. And we hope to see you then. And until then, may you blessed be.
Blessed be.